From the heart and mind of the Apostle Paul, he wrote these words to the church that he loved and cared about and founded in Corinth. Now, it is not necessary for me to write you about the ministry to the saints, for I know your eagerness, which is the subject of my boasting about you to the people of Macedonia, saying that Achaia has been ready since last year, and your zeal has stirred up most of them. But I'm sending the brothers in order that our boasting about you may not prove to have been empty in this case, so that you may be ready, as I said you would be. Otherwise, if some Macedonians come with me and find that you are not ready, we would be humiliated, to say nothing of you in this undertaking. So I thought it necessary to urge the brothers to go on ahead and to you and arrange in advance for this bountiful gift that you have promised, so that it may be ready as a voluntary gift and not as an extortion. The point is this: the one who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and the one who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each of you must give as you have made up your mind, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to provide you with every blessing in abundance, so that by always having enough of everything, you may share abundantly in every good work. As it is written, He scatters abroad, He gives to the poor, His righteousness endures forever. He who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will supply and multiply your seed for sowing and increase the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way for your great generosity, which will produce thanksgiving to God through us. For the rendering of this ministry not only supplies the needs of the saints, but also overflows with many thanksgivings to God. Through the testing of this ministry, you glorify God by your obedience to the confession of the gospel of Christ and by the generosity of your sharing with them and with all others, while they long for you and pray for you because of the surpassing grace of God that He has given you. Thanks be to God for this indescribable gift. That's the word of the Lord. That's the word of the Lord. Okay, I'll see if I can help you. Fun to come to church this morning, a little crisp air. Been waiting on 50 degree and 40 degree air. And I go to the Walmart and they're already getting ready for Halloween, candy everywhere. And it won't be long till Thanksgiving. And we've got actually Christmas shoe boxes in the vestibule for you, so you can, it just rolls right on. Life in the United States. Isn't it great to live in this country? I mean, to be in a place where we're safe and secure and there's great bounty. And if we work hard and have fortunate blessings, then we have access to the economy and can have a great life. Did I get that right? But I'm thinking, and I've been thinking this week as I've read this text, of the people of Syria. They're in their 7th year of civil war. Do you remember the phrase Arab Spring? Arab Spring happened 7 years ago, and one of the results of Arab Spring is what's happening in Syria. They revolted against the tyranny of Bashar al-Assad, and there's been civil war in Syria ever since. And it's created a huge problem for all the world. Refugees everywhere. People in Germany have said, enough, enough. People in Europe all around Germany have said, enough. Even in our country where there is great bounty, we've said we've got so many people immigrating into our country from Latin America, illegal and legal, that we don't know how we might be able to help. And some of the most unfortunate people are people who've said, I don't care what they do here. I don't care what bombs they drop. I don't care that there's no school, no hospitals, that we're not even sure where we'll get fresh water or how we'll have. Some people have chosen to stay and live their lives in Syria, waiting for the day that peace will dawn. What a world. Now, it may not make sense to you, but I'll do my best. That is the situation into which the Apostle Paul is writing this letter to the church at Corinth. Jerusalem and Israel was as Syria is today. The Roman government had it up to here with the Jewish people. They revolted. Roman armies came in and absolutely devastated Jerusalem. They tore it down and burned it. The temple, for the second time in the history of Israel, was razed to the ground. People fled for their lives. They became refugees, many of them leaving and going to places all around the rim of the Mediterranean Sea. Some people, though, said, Israel is my home. I was born here and I will die here. Some people said, I don't care what they do to the temple or to the walls of Jerusalem. Jerusalem in this area has been my home since I was a boy, and I'm not leaving. And the Apostle Paul loved these people. He grew up with these people. He was educated in Jerusalem. He learned to be a follower of Moses' law in Jerusalem. On his way to Damascus, Syria, of all places, the light of Christ dawned on the Apostle Paul, and he realized he was called not to follow the law of Moses, but follow Jesus. He realized Jesus Christ was Lord of all, and that Christ was risen from the dead, just as the Christians had been preaching. He realized that the mercy of God and the strength of God and the love of God and everything we need to know about God was available in Jesus Christ. And he gave his life to Christ. And he went all over the rim of the Mediterranean and preached in places to people like you and me, not to Jews, but rednecks and Gentiles. And he established churches in Macedonia, in Achaia, and in Greece and Turkey. He went and established churches. In Corinth, he established a church. But he never forgot his home. He never forgot Jerusalem. And so in all the churches that he had established where he went, he said, now we're going to receive an offering and a collection for the saints. What he meant was for the people in Jerusalem. We're going to collect money. And I am going to take that money myself someday. In a year and a two, when God allows, when I can go back, I'm going to carry that money back and I'm going to give it to them and let them know that they are loved and cared about and prayed for. And so everywhere he went, they received an offering. And that's why I'm talking to you about the collection. He loved these people. He wanted them to have food to eat and shelter. He wanted them to have medicine when they needed and a coat for the cold air. And so he intended to go back to Jerusalem, and he wanted to carry with him a bountiful and generous offering. And he said to all his churches, please receive an offering. And he just wrote to the church at Corinth, said, now I'm coming to receive your part of that offering on my way back to Jerusalem. Don't disappoint me, he said. I've been bragging about you everywhere I go, about your generosity. So when I come there, I want you to not embarrass me. I would be humiliated after bragging about you if I came there and it was all talk and no action. And he was smart, and he was what I would call assertive. He said, I'm sending a couple of the brothers ahead of me to stir you up so you can go and get to your piggy bank that you've been collecting, and when I get there, I'll receive your offering. Wonderful, wonderful. And there was more at stake than food. There was more at stake than shelter. The gospel itself was at stake, and the Apostle Paul knew this. He wanted the people in Jerusalem, the Jews who had become Christians, to understand that the gospel was powerful. It had broken down barriers of race and culture and language and made people who really didn't like each other to sit down and eat with each other and began to think of each other and regard each other as brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ without regard to race or culture. So the offering that he took was clear evidence that the gospel was working, changing people's lives. And the gospel is at stake here when we receive the offering. People are driving right by now and going, what is going on over there? Some of my friends who don't go to church anywhere, when I meet them at the gym, they say, what's going on at your church? And I tell them, well, we decided to put a liquor store in. You should come and see. We have the best prices in town. They look at me, what? And I said, well, if I tell you that we're offering the gospel of Christ, you won't come. But if I tell you we got Woodford Reserve at a better price, you'll show up. And I stir up conversation with them. I'm a nut. but it works for me. If people drive by and they see things going on, they go, what? The gospel is at stake when people watch our church. If they see the shrubs grow up and the grass get tall and it looks unkept, they go, what's going on over there at the Methodist church? But when they see it changing and growing and expanding, they go, what's going on at the Methodist church? The gospel itself is at stake. And the Apostle Paul, as he writes to the church at Corinth, makes some statements that will preach anywhere and that remind us of what generosity is all about. He says to them, those who sow sparingly will reap sparingly. And those who sow bountifully will reap bountifully. Please hear that end of it. God knows how to bless you and to supply all your needs. You can't outgive God. When I lived up the road an hour and a half in Hall County in the dairy farming community, I came in one afternoon. Buckshot was sitting there tired, worn out, dust all over him, chewing tobacco, spitting in a can. I said, Buck, how's it going? He laughed and he said, well, pray for me, preacher. I just put $126,000 out on the ground. Plowed it up, put seed, fertilizer, $126,000. He said, you better pray that it rains, because if it doesn't, you won't get paid. So I prayed. And it rained and the sunshine came and the soil did its work. And what the Apostle Paul said actually became a reality right in front of my eyes. He had gone out there and sowed bountifully, and guess what? He reaped bountifully that fall. The Apostle Paul is trying to say the same thing to you and to me with regard to generosity. And I understand. I live in the same county you do. And so I know at times it's not easy to be generous. It's not easy to learn that. Sometimes we squeeze the nickel so hard that the buffalo screams. In 1972, I started going to church. They had a generosity campaign. J.R. Matthews walked to the microphone and encouraged people to tithe, which means to give a tenth of your income. So I was making $98.50 a week. I started giving $10 a week to the church in 1972, and pretty much, except for a year or two in seminary, kept that pattern. But I struggled with it in 1988. I really struggled with it. I got what I call pickup truck envy. I'm sorry. I'm confessing a sin. I hope it's a venial sin, but I got pickup truck envy. I was driving a 1977 F100 pickup truck that was on its second engine and third clutch. The floorboard was rusty, but I loved that truck. I loved that truck. I dated Lisa and won her heart in that truck. And then in my youth group, kids who were graduating from high school started driving up in new Toyota Tacomas, sticker on the windshield. Their sorry, good-for-nothing parents were buying them brand new pickup trucks. I went and looked at their giving to the church, and I got pickup truck envy real bad. Some of these kids were driving four-wheel drive brand new Toyota Tacoma pickup trucks. And I'm preaching to them, and I'm leading them in the youth group, and they're driving off in new trucks, and I'm cranking old Greenie. And I got pickup truck envy bad. The church raised my salary that year to $50,000. I never thought I would make $50,000 to talk about the love of Christ. They raised my salary to $50,000. And I started struggle with tithing. That's $5,000 I was going to give to the church in 1988. $5,000 is a lot of money. You know what $5,000 will do? $5,000 will buy a Toyota Tacoma four-wheel. And I was whining to my pastor and friend, Dr. Claude Smithmeyer, about tithing and giving $5,000 a year to the church. He said, I can solve that problem for you today. And I said, well, I wish you would. Please tell me. He said, go to the leaders in your church and have them reduce your salary to the level at which you're comfortable giving 10% of your income. Solved my problem immediately. Pickup truck envy just went away immediately. Do you understand what I'm saying? And what is it that causes you to struggle with generosity? You want the house that other people have, the boat that other people have, the lake house that they have, the car that they have, the pickup truck that they have. Envy. If I just had that, then I would be happy. Is it really stuff that fulfills us? Christ stood on the steps of Jerusalem's temple and said, "Come to me if you're thirsty. I'll give you a spring of water that will spring up your soul, and you'll be nourished. You'll never be thirsty again. I'm the bread of life. Come to me. You'll never spend a day in your life hungry. Never." And he meant for God. It's not easy to be. Think about what prevents your generosity. And hear the Apostle Paul. Those who sow sparingly reap sparingly. But if we're generous, those who are bountiful in their sowing will reap bountifully. Later in my life, after I got over pickup truck envy, I began to hit another spiritual snag with regard to generosity and giving. I began to feel like everywhere I went, everybody was sticking their hand in my pocket, wanting money from me. Now, you probably never feel that way. Do you ever feel that way? Everywhere you go, somebody wants what's in your pocket. And I was beginning to feel that way. In church, in the taxes, here, there, everybody was like, I just almost wanted to take my check and just put it on the public square and say, "May I please have beans?" And it was getting all over me. Have you ever been there? And we went to annual conference that year, and wouldn't you know it, they decided to receive a special offering for somebody. I don't even remember who. I just remember that it fried my bacon and made me mad. I mean, it made me immediately angry. Now, even at annual conference in the Methodist Church, someone else is reaching into my pocket. And I was sitting there just fuming, and Bishop Ernest Fitzgerald must have seen my face. Or he must have seen the faces all over the annual conference that people were feeling that way. And so he walked to the microphone. This is what he said to us. "I want you to know this morning, brothers and sisters in Christ, that you don't owe these people one red cent, not one thin dime. You don't owe them anything, not anything. And if you feel like you're being extorted, then don't give, because God loves a cheerful giver." He said, all I ask you to do this morning before we receive this offering is to think about the people who've been generous to you in your life and who've helped you in your difficult seasons of life. And he went and sat down. And I thought about Carolyn Agee, who when I was a student in seminary, I couldn't afford to pay anybody to cut my hair. I had to cut my own hair. And she cut my hair. She cut my hair, and I looked respectable. And I would come to her house. Back in those days, I was trying to just survive. I was eating beanie weenies. Do you remember beanie weenies? Beanie weenies and scrambled eggs and peanut butter toast was my nourishing, healthy diet. But when I went to her house, she would say to me, "You look hungry." Which I said, "Of course I'm hungry. All I'm eating is peanut butter toast and beanie weenies out in Jackson County preaching to 35 people a week." She said, "Let me go to," and she would put a meal fit for a king, butter beans, fried okra, cornbread. She would take out of her refrigerator and pour me sweet iced tea, and I would eat at her table. I thought of James Ginn. He was a member of the Lebanon Methodist Church. About 9, 10, 11 people would worship there every Sunday. I thought of James Ginn, who once a month would come and pick me up and take me to Athens, Georgia, and buy my dinner at the Red Lobster. The Red Lobster. Still one of my favorite places to eat. And sometimes the waitress will bring the cheese biscuits, and I'll be sitting there crying. And she was like, "Are you all right?" And I'm thinking of my friend James Ginn, who took me to this restaurant once a month. And it was the only nice restaurant I ever ate at for years and years and years. And I think of him. I thought of Ernest Reeves, who came up to me one day when gas went through the roof. I'm talking, it went to 53 cents a gallon. He came to me and handed me his Amoco credit card and said, "For the next year, your gas is on me." I thought of the McJenkins Sunday School class from the Skyland Methodist Church, who without fail for 3 years cut a check for $50 and mailed it to me, and that was my gravy money. Occasionally, even as a young minister, I would date, and I had $50 to spend for dinner on a girl. Or sometimes I would say, "I don't think so." And I would go to Coco's on Briarcliff and eat dinner and buy the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and finish dinner with chocolate pie. chocolate pie. And I thought all those things in a millisecond as Bishop Fitzgerald sat down in his chair, and I gave generously and cheerfully with a different spirit. Am I making sense to you? God calls us to be cheerful givers. Did anyone win the lottery last night? Are you keeping up with the lottery? Because, I could use $1 billion right now. Did anyone win? Nobody won that? Okay, it's a venial sin, but I'll have a ticket and I'll be looking on Tuesday. And money, it can't buy what really matters. And have you heard the phrase money talks? Have you heard the phrase that money actually does talk? It actually does. I know how to talk to money. Ministers take a course in seminary how to talk to money. And do you know what they do with money when it gets old? When the money you carry gets old, do you know what they do with it? They burn it. And there was a $50 bill getting ready to be burned, standing next to a $1 bill that was also getting ready to be burned. And the $50 bill said to the $1 bill, it's been a wonderful life. I've been to the Bahamas. I've been to the Augusta National Golf Course 6 times. I've been there. I've been skiing in the Rocky Mountains. I've been all over the world. I went to Australia. I've been to the Olympics. The $50 bill said to the $1 bill, it has been a wonderful life. The $1 bill said, well, not for me. For me, it's been go to church, go to church, go to church, go to church. You understand what I'm saying to you there? Did that communicate? Thank you for your laughter. I ask you to think about generosity. And I am here not to extort anything from you, not a dime. If it makes you mad, keep it. Go buy yourself some new shoes. But those who sow bountifully reap bountifully. And there's some things in the world that makes God smile. When somebody comes forward and gives a coat so that somebody who would be cold is now warm, God goes, yeah. When somebody gives food so that a person who is hungry has something to eat, God goes, yes. And when somebody chooses to be generous and to sow bountifully, and they do it cheerfully, God says,